Hey everyone, episode 13, Father's Day episode. What's good, everyone? Joining us is LC Baker. He's a gentleman with the hat.
Howdy, sir.
And we have Brandon Price as well.
How you doing?
Cool. And of course, my teammates. We have Kyra, hair laid as always.
Looking good. Looking good. Looking like $2 million. Okay.
We got Lawrence, and we also got Rob. He just stepped out. Got a stun on.
You cool too, Rob. You cool too.
Hey man, my first name is Smooth. You know, that's what they call me.
But yeah, like first off, how's everyone doing? In light of everything going on.
Good, man. Holding strong. Just trying to be that backbone, man. You know, the family. My wife is actually a labor and delivery nurse, so she's sort of on the front line of the COVID situation. But just making sure she's cared for and taking care of her, and we're all healthy. So definitely happy there.
Good to hear. Great to hear. How about you, Brandon?
I'm doing good. Just adjusting every day. Just trying to be mindful, checking in, making sure everybody's good. I have to say, for the most part, I mean, we've been pretty unimpacted, you know, by the pandemic. Me and my wife, we've both been able to work from home, which has been good. You know, I think every married person just understands that, you know, when you say your vows, you say through sickness and health, but nobody talked about, you know, 24 hours a day for 3 months pandemic. And so we're adjusting to that kind of arrangement.
Hey, that's real.
That's real.
But we doing well. So thanks for checking in.
Yeah, no doubt. But yeah, for the sake of time, we'll just kind of jump right into it. Let me set this timer to keep myself accountable. But yeah, so first off, you know, just kind of like what you guys were kind of leading up into. So how has parenthood, and like you were touching on, Brandon, just, you know, just being with your partner essentially 24 hours. I know LC, you're a realtor, so you kind of move a little bit, and you can kind of touch on that too. But how has that been, just being a father and a house in a historic pandemic?
I'll let Brandon take it first.
Well, I'll say I'm definitely glad it was towards the end of the school year, because homework was tough enough. So then you go from, you know, supplementing what the teacher was doing with homework to being the primary teacher and trying to kind of navigate through all of that. I have to admit, man, it was rough. It was real rough, because, you know, you're trying to work and meet your goals, your objectives, and trying to kind of nurture everybody as you kind of just everybody's adjusting to the pandemic and the ambiguity of all of that, because of course there was conflicting reports initially, as well as, you know, trying to be husband, you know, being parent and teacher. I mean, it just was a lot. And for my daughter, her being the only child, you know, she wasn't getting the level of socialization that she was accustomed to with her peers and all of that. So in addition to being teacher, you got to be play partner, you got to be disciplinarian, and then try to find out some way to kind of be in touch with yourself and you know, give yourself what you need. And so I think we kind of get into a little bit more of a groove now that it's summertime. We're kind of adjusting, as this is kind of looking like it's going to be a little bit longer than what was initially anticipated. You know, we might gonna have to, the playroom might have to become an office. You know, the dining room table just is not conducive for, you know, working for extended periods of time. And so we just adjusting, we making the changes that we need to make. And like I said, we're a lot more well off than a lot of people, because at this point we haven't dealt with any sickness or any of that kind of stuff. And so we just kind of inconvenienced with being at home at this point.
Yeah, and Yeah, I feel for the parents, like, especially dads. It's just like, because one, you have to serve as, like LC was saying, the backbone in like a midst
Right.
of uncertainty, and you're essentially working two jobs simultaneously. Because I'm sure, like,
Right.
little meetings or what have you, you gotta like tend to your kid and what have you. So I could only imagine. But
And if I could just add one other thing, I think when you talk about a backbone, like you want your back to be strong enough for whatever you anticipate coming. And so I think for me, first it was like, is there gonna be toilet paper? You know what I'm saying? Is there gonna be groceries? And like if things get scarce, to what level are people gonna act crazy in order to make sure their family, has what they need? And then as a man, how am I gonna have to adjust to make sure that my family has what they need? I'm glad that it wasn't what it could have been. You know what I mean? Like, but just the anxiety of making sure as a man, that I was in position to do what needed to be done to make sure, because my family is not, we don't rough it. Like they're pretty privileged, so you know they can't just eat whatever you put on the plate because it's survival mode. Like,
yeah,
so
I want my filet mignon.
yeah, my daughter like, what's this? So I mean, I went and got some survival food just in case it got real bad, but it'd have been tough if they really had to eat the stuff that I went and got, So just the stress of all of that as a man, like they don't always have to think about those types of things. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I had to make sure. I'm like, if he gets kind of sketchy, I'm okay. I'm good. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
I feel you. How about you, OC?
I would say, man, it's been a shift, but it's been a good shift. I feel like I got to spend so much more time with them, and they got to see what work looked like. And I have two boys, one's 6 and one's 4, so seeing what work looks like, seeing what daddy does on a day-to-day basis was something I look forward to showing them. But I also didn't want to like take them in the car, and I didn't want them to. But in this environment, I can kind of give them their time dedicated, and I'm around them enough where they can ask questions, they can see it. Every time I pull up a house and I'm looking for a client or something, he's like, "Yeah, I want that house. I want that house." That's what my oldest is. I'm like, "Yeah, all right, buddy. Yeah, we'll be all right." But it's always cool just to see that he's engaged in seeing what I'm doing and seeing what work looks like, and seeing it in many different forms, because he was born when I was doing, oh, this my youngest is coming in here. I'm sorry. Yes, but yes, but
see what we talking about?
not right
this is real
now.
life.
Hold on, bud. I'm on a call right now. Can I finish my call, then I'll come play the video game? Yeah. Okay, I'll be in there in a little bit, okay? No, it's all right. All right, bud. Thank you. Sorry about that. Appreciate
you're
that.
good.
Come here.
I
I'm
have
gonna show you my
real
man.
time.
Yeah, this is my buddy Silas. Say hey, bud.
Hey, Silas.
Everybody say hi. All right, I'll see you in a little bit, okay? Okay, you're gonna sit right there and wait. All right. So again, but this is one of those things where he gets to watch things happen in real time and just ask questions and see what goes on and answer them. And I tried to just frame it up for my family from jump with COVID, that this is a blessing, just trying to see what God was doing in all of this. And so often we're like, man, if we could just get a break, And although both of our jobs were kind of like Brandon said, unaffected in terms of real estate still moved, and obviously my wife still had to go to work, but everything was kind of centered around the home and not around the locations. And so we got to spend a lot of time with them. And I'm more hip to Pokemon and Bakugan and all of the sorts with the kids, whereas I wasn't as much. I think they've demolished me in Beyblades a little too much, and my pride was a little hurt. But so when I put them down for naps, I'm going to practice a little bit so I can get better. I can't get a little competitive edge coming out.
Word. That's what's up. And I guess on a just under the lens of what was going on in the news, and I'm sure everyone could speak to this, just being inundated with just everything. There's a lot going on. How have you addressed what's been going on, and just you guys both being faithful men, like how have you brought faith into that conversation as well?
Yeah. If I'm honest, I haven't had that conversation. And I don't plan on it
Yeah.
until I truly feel like they're ready to comprehend that. Just because when I look back at my childhood, um, everything was a dream. Everything was a dream up until it wasn't. Honestly, I was a football player. I just knew I was going to the NFL.
Yeah.
Nobody could tell me anything, and if that didn't work out, I was going to be an engineer. Had it all planned out. It didn't work, but it was a dream that I was allowing to manifest itself. And that drove me, and that drove every relationship, every decision I made. It's like, oh yeah, hey man, we're about to go drink. Nah, man, if I drink, I can't make the NFL. So no, you know what I mean? So that drove everything
That's
under that context. And
determination.
so I would rather them move forward dreaming. And don't get me wrong, at about 12, 10, I mean, they're gonna feel it at that point. But I just don't want them to go out and start being scared of people because we weren't able to rightly contextualize it all.
Yeah.
Right now, my oldest loves cops. You know what I mean? He loves law enforcement in general. I have friends, teammates, fraternity brothers who are cops, and when they come, it's like, yes, oh man, I get to do this, turn the lights on, blah blah blah. So I don't want to remove that veil and make this world, let them see this world for somewhat of the monster that it could be sometimes.
Mm. Yeah, that's real. Lawrence,
My,
oh, I'm
I was
sorry.
just gonna say my approach has been a little bit different. Like I said, my daughter's 8, so she's a little bit older. And my daughter asks a lot of questions. We actually dealt with race early on, man. My daughter really started to kind of deal with it in a 2-year-old way. Um, just kind of a fascination with some people being dark, some people being light. And at some point she even alluded that she wanted to be white. And so we've kind of been having forms of this conversation all along. And so you know, for my daughter, we had a conversation here recently, and she was like, I just don't understand, because I just always thought that cops were good. And I'm like, they are, but then there's some that aren't as good as the others. And I really wanted her to be able to, she's really kind of in all of this, wanted to become like a little revolutionary,
Oh, word.
but because things are not as organized as I would like them to be, and there's really no solid foundation. Like, you don't know when the police are going to like ramp things up, and you don't know when the agitators are going to kind of come and take the whole peaceful situation hostage. And so I haven't really been able to like engage her the level that I probably would be comfortable with, just because, as a father, her safety is my responsibility. You know what I mean? And so, but we've had conversations all along just about race and privilege and all of that. Some she gets, some she doesn't. But because of her, I always said, it showed me how sophisticated of a system America is, that my 2.5-year-old would begin to wrestle with her own self-image and her own self-value at 2.5. Like, and so because of that, we've kind of had I've been intentional about having certain conversations with her. And like I said, some of it's because she's a little bit, socially aware, cognizant. We watch the news, which I have to kind of monitor how much of that, because, as a mental health professional, there's certain traumas that are normative but are not normal and are not conducive for healthy mental health. And so so it's one thing to kind of have her a little bit exposed but not overwhelmed, where she can't function and manage her own, her feelings and all. And so we've been having some conversations. One of my wife's cousins, is, you know, a sergeant. So, you know, he's been a cop for a long time and he's moved up. So she was able to see him on the news. He actually was on the news having conversations with protesters and kind of hearing from the community. And so she's kind of seen it both ways, you know, so.
Yeah, that's yeah, and just seeing just the different approaches and just how you all talk to your children about what's going on or how you choose not to. I was just curious, you know, just because I know Elsie, I know your kids are a little bit younger too, so I completely understand too. Just trying.
Could
Yeah,
I add one thing?
yeah,
And obviously it's totally okay for us to go different ways. We know our kids. But what I actually said, it was like 3 weeks ago, the Titanic was on randomly. We're watching the Titanic, and I promise you, this is how sort of in tune to his feelings and just this utopia of a world that my son has right now. He was like, wait, Daddy, like, is this real? Did those people actually die? And he's like, Daddy, don't tell me that. I don't want to know if they actually died now. Don't even answer that question. And it was right then that I knew that, he's not ready for that. He's not ready for this question about police officers, that they're being some bad cops. But the way I had to rationalize that thought was, being that we're a conglomerate of just faith and everything. It's like, am I gonna tell my son about the prosperity gospel preachers? Am I gonna tell him about you know what I mean? Am I gonna look at the bad apples in every sphere of this world and tell him that and allow that to frame how he looks at the world? Or am I gonna allow him to just navigate it and see it and just let him know every time he reaches a new idea or epiphany that Daddy's gonna be there to sort of shepherd you through it and understand it a little better. And at least that's my hope. You know what I mean? It's trial and error. As Brandon would tell you, that we don't have a manual to these kids, but but in my mind, that's how it's rolling. And I know, and if I'm honest with myself, I don't know if I'm prepared to fully shepherd him through the conversations that need to happen at some point about race and about just using weapons and killing and in general, let alone from the people that you're entrusted with, you know what I mean, serving justice.
Yeah, no doubt. Hey, Lawrence, I see you had dropped a few questions. I'm sorry, I know I've kind of put you on blast a little bit. Did you? I mean, feel free to ask, and Kyra and Rob, feel free. You know, of course, this isn't my show; this is ours. So, you know, feel free to pop in and what have you. But Lawrence, you can go ahead. Good questions.
I just want to make sure it transitioned good because I didn't want us to go from, you know, over there and then we go over in the outfield somewhere. But my question, since this is the Father's Day podcast, I wanted to know what was your relationship like with your fathers, and then also what were some of the lessons that they taught you, whether it was lessons through their character or words or actions or deeds or maybe even their absence.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to join, as you will see that I can talk with everybody. My dad, I'm a junior. I look exactly like my father. We are spitting image. So he's who I idolized, and not because he had the accolades of Kobe Bryant or Michael Jordan or Barack or anything, but just because he was there. He was what I thought was perfection in a man and a father. Because he never missed a game. I played sports throughout, played AAU basketball. He was always there. My mom was there. And just knowing my mom and seeing who my dad was and how patient he was with her, how steady he was, and how they just navigated their marriage, that's what I always wanted. So I got married at 25, I want to say. So we 8 years in. And all I wanted to do was emulate what my parents had, and that's because of who I saw my dad as. So and he was in the Air Force, so there was some absence there in a sense, but not the same type of absence. But there were times where it was just me, my brother, and my mom, and I saw my mom in a different light, but I also saw how they navigated their marriage and how they navigated life in general. My dad played football all throughout. And then that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a receiver. He was a receiver. I wanted to do everything my dad did. But I also, at some point, I don't know when it happened, probably at like 12 or 13, I wanted to be better than him. I wanted to be a better dad. I wanted to be a better man. I want to be, not in the sense to put him down, but just in the sense that in my mind, the way the world works and the way the world grows is that my dad goes through life. And it's basically trial and error. He's the best man that he could possibly be. And then he teaches me everything he knows. And then I take that and double up on that. And then I do the same for my kids. And so that's the cycle. And then once that epiphany kind of happened, I kept running with it. And so our relationships, I mean, it's great. I mean, we got our own little handshake and all types of stuff. And my kids love them. So it's I don't know. And I think that's what's framed up who I am as a father, and set the standard. And I'm trying to exceed it each day.
And so, once again, it just can show how life can be different. I mean, I was primarily raised by my stepfather. He came around when I was about 6 or 7. And I, I'm thankful for him. Many of my peers didn't have a male, not a permanent male in the household at all. And so I benefited from that. I'll say that it probably took me being about 25. I got married at about 25 as well. It took me maybe about 25, 28, something like that. I was sitting in the kitchen and I was able to kind of like revisit. I don't know what it is about me and water, from taking a shower, washing dishes, sitting by the lake. Like, I just had this connection with water where I get these epiphanies where I realized that, even though me and my stepdad have a pretty turbulent relationship, and we really don't have a relationship at all now for various reasons, but I really appreciate him, because one thing that my dad was able to do for me was he created an environment where I dibbled and dabbled in the streets and did different things, but I knew I always had to come home and I had somebody to be accountable to. And so I couldn't go as far as some of my peers could because I had to come home. So I had to look the same. I had to smell the same. Like, if I did have something new, I had to hide it somewhere, so I do appreciate him, because, where many of my peers turn to really going hard at selling drugs and, committing crimes and things like that. Like, I worked, and I started working when I was 12, cutting grass. And along the way, I've had a lot of male mentors that really have kind of given me, supplemented some of the things that I wasn't able to get from my dad, through those relationships. And so, for the most part, what I've done as a father is I've tried to like emulate. One, I've learned what not to do in some ways. And so I do the opposite of that. Sometimes I do the same thing and then I look back and be like, that didn't work for me,
Yeah.
But also I've seen things in other men that I, valued and that I benefited from. And I've tried to embody that. And so in some ways, me and my wife talk about it all the time. In some ways, as parents, we're trailblazing, not only for our daughter, but for our family, because there's some accomplishments that we've had at this point that is not historic for our family, and so I do the best I can. Sometimes I get it right, sometimes I don't. So yeah, that's kind of what my influence has been. Some what not to do, some what to do, and then just kind of putting it all together to organically just try to be attentive to my daughter's needs as best as I can.
No doubt. No doubt.
How about you guys? If we could ask a question.
Oh, no, you're good. might end up going a little over an hour, but I would say, well, actually, ladies first. Kara, if you don't mind. I know I put you on the spot. I'm your boy, but I'm buying myself time too.
I'm not like, I have a relationship with my dad, but it's the relationship that I have as a woman at like 26. It's not the relationship that I'll ever have at like 12. Which I think is like really cool to like come to a sense of resolution about that. But I think for the most part, what I've learned the most, like in terms of like having relationships with all different kinds of men, and I hope this doesn't sound weird, and I feel like sometimes you can feel like like when you're kind of talking about daddy issues or like experiences with men, I feel like a lot of times like you can feel insecure about like saying that you've been able to find father figures in so many different kinds of people. Like in some way, shape, or form, some people can kind of feel like you're broken, but you're not. You're just kind of still mending different kinds of pieces of yourselves within different people. And I feel like for the most part, I've been able to kind of like have an aspect of a father figure from so many different kinds of guy friendships. Like I would even say like a friendship with Sterling that I've been able to have. Like I've been able to receive like aspects of like, you know, don't be like, oh, patting yourself on the back 100%. But it's the Lord that's worked through you, the Lord.
I can hear Sterling. Call me daddy. Put some respect on my name.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Oh my god.
This probably goes down as like probably one of the top 10 best moments on Babel at this time. Okay? Probably one of the best.
It's going down in history.
It's going down in history. Just finding like aspects of love and understanding and acceptance. And then I think even too, like things that I've been able to find in a lot of friendships with a lot of guys is like learning like, okay, like what kind of things do I want in a man? What kind of things do I want for my sons one day, or daughters if I don't happen to get sons? And then even interestingly enough, I think even too, finding father figures in particular, celebrity aspects, like I've always felt like Malcolm X was the father I never got the chance to have. And so I feel like in a lot of ways, kind of like being able to adopt a sense of closeness and understanding and looking at certain things that like maybe even like in my father, like what would like guy relationships that I have with dudes that are like 19 or like, you know, 18, even 20 something, like what would my father have been like if he would have had the chance to be what they are like now. So it's been cool learning that, and then learning like, okay, like what kind of wife do I want to be, and then like what kind of mother do I want to be to a black man like in the future. So it's reflective.
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Kyra. Hey Rob, do you mind sharing? Are you comfortable sharing? I know he's quiet. Hold on.
Oh man, Rob all over the place.
Not even, man. It's just it's a little bring the records Wu-Tang in the background, so I gotta tune into I'm gonna go to the closet, y'all, because I ain't trapped. This is great. Oh my gosh, I got a recording here. I'm working on an album, y'all. Wow. All right. Yeah. So I would say, number one, my father's amazing. He's helping me now with mental health navigation because, I mean, y'all know, I ain't got to elaborate on that. Number two, I'm an uncle of many little seedlings out there because my tribe is very colorful like my pants. So, yeah, man, I'm a parental person. I'm family oriented. So my father's 20 years of military experience, Surrey County roots, culinary skills, and just his dapper nature, and plus, like, of course, the fortitude and such. I'm that, but like 28 years old, and he's like in his 60s, but he looks like he's like 40. So yeah, good genetics, and that's number one, really. Number two is like, man, I've been a parent and counselor in so many situations to my tribe because I'm talking about and I got to obviously censor because we're on Babel and I know how to do that, but I'm talking substance abuse, I'm talking mental health, I'm talking epilepsy, I'm talking taking my buddy to Riverside because he slashed his throat, and I was like, bro, yeah, you could have called me, but I know how you do, you know, and he's kind of tight about me right now because I did something that I definitely shouldn't have done, but he had the opportunity to do the same thing, but he's not as his faith wavers, and he doesn't job the job, as I say, because he ain't marinating the gumbo, as SportsCenter Sterling Josh said. Bang bang. Mm-hmm. Our editorials be lit, you know, and that's pretty much it. I think moving forward, definitely digging into the word more. Right now, I know with everything going on, I gotta say it because I don't know. I said it this morning on Facebook Live, and I'm like, well, I'm probably blocked, but whatever, because I don't know if y'all heard about what they said at Christopher Newport University. Paul Tribble, he said some things about the protests and such. It was a news article, and I didn't read the article, but I heard through the grapevine of some of my tribe. They were like, "Hey, Rob, you know Paul said this," and I'm like, "My Paul, not the apostle, or is he an imposter though?" So I laid into him and I said what I said, and I am, bipolar, but meds twice a day, blah blah blah. And I say it so casually because I'm a mental health advocate, and it hurt me when he said that because I've been arrested 3 times, you guys. I went to Riverside in 2018 because I wanted it to end, but guy was like, not quite. And today was like, word, confirmation. So every other day after this is just another 24 hours of manifestations and finessing these blessings, man. So that's my piece, and I'm going to say less.
Yeah, Rob.
Yeah, for sure.
Hey, I appreciate your transparency, Rob.
Yeah.
It's a work in progress, man. I'm an artist who has 3 books, but not too many people brought them, so I got to make an album. But it's already pretty much done. So, I'm like, look, God, but the light. All right.
Word. It's for sure, man.
For sure.
Monsieur Green.
What can I say about Mr. Green, Hardy G? My dad was in the military, and so Army. He just retired, I think, in 2015. 28 years in the Army. Retired as a colonel in Uncle Sam's Army, but also being a minister, and all my life. So if he wasn't in Iraq, we was in church. And if we wasn't in church, we was at home. And if we wasn't at home, we was at church. And so I just saw a man who was fully dedicated to his career and fully dedicated to God. And granted, I never lacked for food, clothing, or shelter, but I do wish I would have had more of that emotional connection and support from him that I didn't get, and then not even fully understanding the fact that he had PTSD. And I didn't know what PTSD was until I went to college. So, or maybe half the world didn't know what PTSD was until we all got to college. But anyways, in these last few years since we've been studying mental health, but I've been seeing, and I just had some real issues with him because I'm like, I'm not one of your soldiers, I'm your son. And so I think now in my adult life, our relationship has gotten better, and I've kind of understand him more as a man, and he's understanding me more as a man. And then we're able to look at each other's flaws and see there were some similarities and similar struggles. And then also some similarities of just being, of where we're growing and where we're going. And so I'm grateful for my relationship with my dad. He's taught me so many things about being on time, being punctual, being a man of your word, always serving God, keeping God first. And,
except today, though, right? Except today, though, right?
What happened today?
You weren't punctual.
About 10 minutes.
Oh, see, you got me here. See what happened with.
Hey, Mr. Green.
Hold on, fellas. Let me grab my microphone. Okay, so
I'm grown now.
Rob gives Brother Lawrence a pass because he's always
I can do what I want.
Good money. He's good. Continue, Shalom.
All of it. But I guess being real particular about just organization and stuff like that. I don't know. It's just some things that I'm coming into my own, and I think he's seeing it more now that he's retired and he can reflect on life and has more time to focus on stuff and do stuff. And so now I think it's growing. So.
Gotcha.
And,
That's awesome.
and just to kind of add, just from the perspective of a parent, I think when you're a kid growing up, you just assume that your parents have it together. And so, there's some level of frustration when they're not what you need them to be, because they're bigger than you. And from your vantage point, why can't you do this? Why can't you be this? Why didn't you teach that? And you know, just for myself, I mean, I got married at 25, but you know, we didn't have kids until I was 30 because I kind of wanted to have myself together a little bit. You know what I mean? And but even at that, it's like you give your kids your best self. And unfortunately, at certain junctures, you parent your kids from your flawed self. And so, you know, I think we all just give our kids the best that we have, and we try to protect our kids from those areas where we know that we're still growing and developing, and we really insinuate those areas where we really feel like we have a handle on life. And so, you know, I'm sure if I was a military person, then I probably would, you know, push those types of things forward because that's kind of the area that I've fully developed myself, and maybe some other areas not be as willing and able and apt to really be able to connect with, you know, with your kids and develop them in those areas. Because, you know, as an individual, as a man, I'm, you know, 38 years old, you know, and so I'm still developing and I'm still growing, and you know, I'm still learning, and there's some areas, you know, that at some point I'm gonna have to sit on the couch to really get, because you know, life kind of shows you like, hey, you're not where you need to be. But guess what? Every day I'm still daddy. Like I can't like time out. You you needing some things from me as a parent that I'm not available to give you right now, and I'll time back in once I get it. It just doesn't work that way. You know, so,
That's real.
you know, and not to make excuses, but I just, you know, from a father's perspective, you know, along the way, you just find out like, man, even when I say like, I want to be the opposite of what my dad was, because I recognize that he wasn't what I needed him to be. In certain situations, I default even to the dysfunction that I know didn't work, because I might not have had an opportunity to develop an alternate strategy. You know what I'm saying? You know, or something catches you off guard, you know, like I got a daughter, so I'm sure when she starts to deal with boys, there's some stuff gonna catch me off guard. And even as a mental health professional, like I don't know how I'm gonna deal with that. You know what I'm saying? So,
That's
you
real.
know.
Yeah, no, that's real, and that brings me to two things to mind for me. One is that I think some of our greatest growth happens in this parenthood journey, because especially for me having boys, my oldest is not spitting image. He looks like me, but he has a lot more hair, obviously. But I see him doing things or getting in trouble the way that I used to get in trouble. And I think the hardest thing for me as a father has honestly been trying to train myself out of my kid.
Right.
It's like, because I play a lot, I'm joking a lot, you know what I mean? He sees me doing pranks or whatever, or scaring people. And he picks that up, but he's totally doing that just raw. It doesn't matter. Somebody can have coffee in their hand straight off the pot, and he just like, I'm like, look, man. So I'm having to contextualize that for him, like when and where, that there's a time and a place for everything. Something I'm sure all of us have heard, but it's like, that's the part where like, everybody's like, I talk to a lot of people like, I just don't know if I'm ready to take care of somebody or be in charge of somebody. I'm like, I don't think you're supposed to be ready. This is part of it. You know what I mean? Like, this growth is happening. That also, the other point they led me to was just recently, this last year was probably the toughest year of marriage for my wife and I. And I had to lean on my father because my mom and dad have been married 38 years.
Oh, wow.
And so it's like 36 years. And I was like, look, Dad, this is like tough. Tell me you and mom have been through something like this to give me some hope. I need some hope right now. And so, but what happened was, because all of us are from the generation that our parents don't really talk to us about sort of what life was like before we came. And so we kind of got to fish it out of them. And so that year and that just hard grind to get back to harmony, it was like, Dad, no, just tell me y'all been through something, tell me this. And that led to like some of the greatest stories I've ever heard about my parents. You can tell that they probably started to relish in what they've been through and how far they've come. But it's like, I think that's another thing we should get back to. Like, last year I was the age in which my dad had me, at 32, and I'm like, man, here I am 32, man, I don't know what's going on. I'm trying to still figure it out. So what that did, at first I was like, dang, all right, here I am. Like I said before, I'm always trying to compare where I am and if I'm actually moving the standard up for my boys. And so I look back and I'm like, Dad. So I just asked him, like, Dad, what did you want to be at 32? What were your goals before I arrived? And he started telling me about all types of stuff. My mom said she wanted to. I have a deaf cousin, and my mom wanted to be sort of like an interpreter. And I'm like, what? I never knew that. I didn't even know that was even remotely a thing. Like, I've never seen you like gaze into at an interpreter and like, oh yeah, I missed those times. But it's like, it led me to ask these questions. And part of me, since we have a lot of people that have some mental health sort of things on their mind and mental health capacity in their background and their tutelage, I think that's a part of us growing our parents. Allowing them space to get that out, because they've been bottling it up. I think our parents are the generation that's probably going to struggle the most with mental health, because it was so taboo for them growing up that they didn't have a chance to heal. And so now I think it's on us to kind of bring that out and have these questions, and we'll be surprised how much that grows us as fathers, as parents ourselves.
Yeah, no doubt. And just I feel like we've been piggybacking off each other the whole conversation, but just to piggyback off your point, LC, and Kyra and I have talked about this too, is just like how our generation, or our parents, like their generation, and even their parents, a lot of them went through Jim Crow, or like the tail end of Jim Crow. And that's, so they're operating from a point of survival. So that inevitably gets passed down to them. And
right.
Because of that, they have to compartmentalize, and we kind of get the brunt of that essentially. So I think our generation, I'm not trying to like, try to exclude y'all. Like, we're all pretty much in the same generation, but like I feel like
Brandon, they're taking shots at us, man. They're taking shots at us.
I earned my grades. It's okay.
But yeah, I promise I'll take your shots. But I feel like I'm glad that we're able to have these conversations now and ask those questions. And I think the older I've gotten, I'm starting to view my parents as like my OGs essentially, like, as opposed to like, of course with the respect factor there, but I can have those conversations, like ask like, my parents about maybe their insecurities coming up and things like that. So it's just been cool how that shift has happened last few years,
Well, I'll just say, I think for our generation, I mean, and you all fall underneath it as well. But I just feel like, when you're in survival mode, it's about meeting those hierarchy of needs. You know what I mean? And I think when I'm talking to my peers, people around my same age, 50 and under, I just feel like there's a more of an expectation for us to be a little bit more like emotionally connected with our kids, a little bit more involved in like nurturing them and being intimately involved in every aspect. Whereas some of the generations before, it was about discipline and provision. Outside of that, in sports, if that was something they were into. Outside of that, you either didn't get it or you got it from your mom. You know what I mean? And so, something that LC said, what I had to realize, because I had daddy issues, like to not stigmatize that. What I found myself doing was I was creating some unhealthy relationships in terms of my own expectation with male authority figures, where I was like expecting them to be something that they wasn't necessarily supposed to be, because I was trying to fill that void. And so, like, just to kind of give you that compare and contrast, of course, I've been married, like, this will be going into 13 years this year. And so, like with LC able to go to his parents, and they not only have gone through, but still going through it, being able to kind of like pull on them. You know, it's one thing to have like a formal mentor or somebody kind of like in your life, but you're gonna get like the PG version. Like you ain't gonna, you know, they ain't gonna give you the real because that ain't really your business, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so what I've had to do along the way, and you know, I was hearing some of the things that Kyra was saying, is I've had to grieve that relationship all over again because when you're a kid, it's like your parents not there, some of your identity and everything is attached to that. And it's something that you entitled to, so you grieve it on that aspect. But as you begin to like go through life, not having somebody that like has been where you are and is you, you know what I mean? Like he said, in his oldest son, he see himself in his son. Well, there was no man that I saw myself in or that felt fully obligated to like nurture the things in me that they had experienced as well. And so I say all that to say is for my own sanity and for my own mental health, I've had to continue to grieve, you know, the absence thereof and the lack thereof so that I could be what I needed to be and not continue to like enter into like, you know, these assumptions within these male relationships because I'm kind of looking for them to kind of fill a void that I wasn't even cognizant that I had. I was trying to figure out like, man, how is it that I'm like disappointed and frustrated when they're not, you know, looking out for me like I felt like they should. And then I realized like, cause they ain't your daddy, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, you ain't bone of my bone, you know what I'm saying? And so just to say all that, you know, I appreciate that LC parents have been there for him, and that's kind of even what provides like a foundation. You know, when me and my wife are going through struggles, is I want to be able to provide that stability and that roadmap for my daughter, because marriage ain't easy. You know what I'm saying? Life ain't easy, and so and I never want her to have to like look to a stranger for something that I'm obligated and expected to provide her. And so, you know, so I kind of wanted to approach it both ways. And in one, like if you feeling some kind of way, like you entitled to that and like own that, you know what I mean? And life will continue to give you some experiences where you reflect on it like, man, this where here's my daddy's spot and he's still not here. And be okay that at 38 years old, you still got some daddy issues. Now, do I want him to swing next to me at 38? Absolutely not. But when me and the wife kind of going through some challenges, I'm trying to figure out like, you know, some grown man stuff. Like that's where my daddy's supposed to be there to show me like, hey, this is how you do it, you know. And so not to interrupt you, but I just kind of wanted to pull that out.
Yeah, that's real. This is really great conversation. And as promised, I know we're getting short on time. We got about 15 minutes or so. Kyra or Rob, do you guys have any questions you have for Elsie or Brandon?
I guess I would like ask you guys, like especially just during like this racial climate, and I totally hate saying that because I just feel like it's been this kind of climate, but everybody's just like, oh my God, what's happening? Oh my God.
But your generation has always been like that. But go
ahead. We apologize.
I mean, you know, the way these
unapologetic
community be working on mental, man, you know.
I guess I would ask you guys, like, what's it been like being married to Black women and then like raising, like having, I guess I would say, what's it been like having the privilege of being married to a Black woman and raising like Black children?
I'll start. My wife is mixed, black and white, but she obviously she connects more with her, I guess, Black side, I guess. But it's been a transition, if I'm honest. She lost her mother when she was 16. Her father was never there, and so she's been growing and evolving, and it's such a she had to be a grown up really early. She had two younger brother and sister. And so I say all this to say that she felt what it was like through my heart cries or my tears or my stories, but it wasn't until she had two boys of her own. We had our two boys until she could fully contextualize, like, whoa, like, man. And so then she started to ask questions again. I mean, I think that's the culture that we've tried to create within our marriage and just within our family in general, is to be able to ask these hard pressing questions, because this information is just pivotal to growing. But being married to her has been amazing. And although I said she was mixed, that's only to give the context of what the boys did for her in terms of her evolution. But I couldn't see it any other way. Between her own story and just the fortitude of the Black woman, I couldn't see it any other way. And I try to celebrate it as much as possible. And also I try to celebrate it in a way that my boys see, because I think that's a big part of fatherhood, is showing them how to love your wife, to love people around you. And the biggest thing that I was gonna say it, but I figured the question would allow me to get to it, was even in terms of this climate, racially, it's like empathy. The big word is empathy. The reason why I'm asking my dad these questions is because I'm trying to empathize with where he was at 32. I'm trying to empathize with, like, when this happened. I mean, my dad was, I want to say, he was young, but when King died. And so I'm like, what did you do? What do you wish you had done? And that information is like, all right, I can take with it what I am. It's not to condemn him, to say, oh yeah, oh, you didn't protest or you didn't do this. It's more like, man, all right, so what should be done? How did this affect you? What do you wish you had done? And all of that is for empathy. And so even in this time, as much as my heart hurts trying to move through this as a man, my wife has been my backbone through this. And that's just, I don't know. Like I said, and I don't know whether it has anything to do with her being Black, but I'm going to attribute that since she is that. But she's just been a rock. And so she's been a stalwart and just the matriarch of our family. And I just can't. And one, she's dealing with three knuckleheads, because I play too much, like I already mentioned, and my oldest plays too much too, and my youngest is just, yeah. He has the gift of gab, and that was who came in, Silas, and so he has his own ways of just navigating life. Many times, like, yeah, just go in the house, and he's like, no, I'm gonna sit right here and rock with you, Dad. That's cool. And so that's how he rolls. But she's been able to navigate that so beautifully and gracefully. And there's been struggles. We've miscarried. We were expecting twins last year. And unfortunately they didn't make it. And that was like the hardest thing. Yeah. And just had to love her through that. And in my head, I'm thinking already like, oh Lord, did I say something I wasn't supposed to? But it's all good, man. We here. We transparent. If y'all don't talk to me again, y'all know why.
Man, I gotta say it because I know my life has been colorful like my pants, man. I had a miscarriage 4 years ago that I just told my mother about, because she was like, what? And I'm like, well, you down in Florida, Mom. Abandonment issues going to be unpacked on this week because I'm going back to therapy, you know. I was going to say something related.
Sorry to hear that, man. They real, man. They real.
I would say in my situation, I found out in hindsight. Hello, neighbors. Sorry. I found out in hindsight, and it's really amazing because I want to say about last summer. Yikes. Yeah, we reconnected, me and said, Queen, and she was like, well, you know, Rob, you know what you did? And I was like, say less, peace. And that's peace on that, you know. It was I needed rekindling, but you know, some things that you put on others is what the brother said about, you know, what do we teach our kids about the future and navigate relationships? It's like you teach them what you didn't like when you were younger, you know. So that's one part. Other part, PTSD, my father Lawrence, and yeah, we're closer now because you said that, and that's been my life too, because I seen PTSD, I seen alcoholism, a number of times. And when I got my DUI, I was like, hey, God, I'm glad you grabbed the wheel, because if not, then I know what path I would have headed on. But you scooped me up and you put me in the little knapsack, and now I'm just bopping along. And I'm like, Jesus, man, like, my niece gave me this rosary, man, so I got to rock it right now because we babbling on.
I
I'm an
appreciate that,
Wu-Tang
man.
fan, so like I got yellow on, like, yo, buzz.
That's what's up.
Yeah.
Kyra, thanks for that question. Hopefully I was able to
Yeah,
answer
that was
that.
solid. That was solid.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I think being a black man in America is war, you know, and I think, you know, my wife, you know, she's amazing. Like, she holds us down because if it was up to me, like, things would not be as comfortable as they are, just because I'm, you know, just not that guy. But I think, like, for me, I've been so traumatized just navigating life and recognizing like all of the different pitfalls and traps and how easy things can go left, that I really try as much as I can to prepare my daughter for everything. Like, you know, I just feel a sense of responsibility that when she leaves my house and you know, she becomes somebody's wife, like, how she does that, I take personal responsibility and accountability for it. You know, and so in that, you know, me and my wife, our conversations are always kind of anchored on like, what kind of model are we setting? Like, will what we do work for her? And then, you know, trying to like make sure that the man that she marries, like, that he adapt me up because of the job that I've done for her, right? By the same token, when I it's also being a father of a daughter has given me a whole different level of respect. I mean, I respected my wife, but my daughter is like so delicate and so precious to me. And so, you know, these last 8 years, I've just felt so frustrated to some degree with those males that really should have been orientating me to what manhood was all about, even in my teenage years. Because, you know, let's say something was to happen and my daughter's mental health and her esteem wasn't where I wanted it to be. You know, some of the liberties, you know, being PG, that I took with some young ladies because they were down for it, you know, I would hope that there would be somebody that wouldn't seize the opportunity to exploit, but seize the opportunity to enhance and to really, you know, be a support. And so, like, because of being, I think part of what has driven me to really like, I mean, I think some things in this next year you all will see, you know, from me if you follow me, but just redefining what manhood is all about, and what it means to be a man. Because, you know, even as we talk about being fathers, there's an assumption that you're the man, that you have the manness to even embody fatherhood. And so many of us go through life, yes, we get older, but we don't necessarily have like the support and the experiences to mature in the way that we need to be the man that we need to be the husband or the father and all of that. And you know, maybe it's different for you all, but I really wasn't prepared to like be a responsible man. Like, you know, it was all about get what you can get as much of it as you can. And, you know, it was just a disrespectful model that I was raised with. And so I think like I said, being a father of a daughter, being a husband has given me just a whole nother level of respect, a whole different value system. Like, I remember, you know, older guys looking at younger girls like, man, I know she gonna be fine when she grow up. Like, as a man with a daughter, like, that's not something that I can even feel comfortable with. Those are, you know what I'm saying? Like, because in my mind, I'm like, you might be looking at my daughter like, you know what I mean? So I just feel like what you said, just the privilege that I've had to be able to like navigate in a woman's world and see a woman develop and like support her in that and learn from that and be in places that, you know, is a privilege for me to be in, you know, to be at a dance recital and to go dress shopping. And, you know what I mean? Like it's been cool. It's been amazing. If I'd have had sons, I don't know if I would appreciate as much because I know what it means to be a boy, but to walk through life in front of and alongside of my daughter, man, has really been a privilege and an opportunity. And so like I just want to do my part to help this next generation and this current generation to be the men that our wives and our daughters and our mothers would all be proud of and enjoy like doing life together with, because, you know, I'm just hoping that, you know, LCs of the world create good sons for my daughter.
Got you, boss. I got you. If I'm not, hold me accountable. That's what
Hey, I
that's what I
got you.
want.
Look,
I was
she
gonna
might have to be a
say
little
to
bit of a cougar, but you know.
Yeah, I was gonna say to that. So, I think the man that you've grown into be, you've matured into be, and solid guy, obviously, and what God has done in your life.
Absolutely.
I think that standard alone is gonna force those guys to not even have a chance, because they
Right.
she sees how you treat her mom, she sees how you love her mom, she sees the grace you show your mom, the mercy and all of that. So when somebody, that, at least that's my hope. I'm always hoping, you know what I mean, for a daughter. I'm gonna be honest with you. And so but in that, my mind is that we're gonna be the standard, you know what I mean,
Right.
of what a man should do, how a man should love him. And so in that sense, it's like she sees her daddy. So if somebody steps there that doesn't fit the standard of her daddy or the conversation that you're having, hopefully it's just like a nice little stiff arm, like, sir, I mean, I appreciate your interest, but I'm just not the one. I'm sorry.
Right.
Or she can be direct and just say, you're not on my level, champ. Like, what are you talking about?
Exactly.
I'm gonna need you to ante up a little bit. I'm gonna need you to.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, being an uncle, and yeah, y'all, I'm dyeing my hair with coffee grounds right now because I feel like that. Because it's a lot of. I know I'm a y'all know Black Hippie TDE, like I'm the missing member from Wakanda Hampton, like yeah. But I actually do it because I walk around with no shoes and socially distance dance around Corona because two of my homies beat it actually, so thank God. And I get a little bit of a different vantage point because I just left my job Wednesday because, hey, America is going on and I can't attend rallies and such because of PTSD, but I'm working on some manifestation. So, yeah, definitely agree. And being an uncle of many, I'm like, hey, y'all, look, you can look, but don't touch. You got to be in museum mentality because you got to have careful sentiments and watch your reality because if what we manifest is what we step into. So, in the words of J. Cole, choose wisely. KOD. Kevin's heart. Oh, man. Jesus. That's hitting hard right now because, oh, man. We'll talk about it, y'all. But yes, Sterling, it's like that.
Thanks so much for your words, Brandon. I appreciate it. Both Brandon and Elsie. I appreciate it a lot. Thank you.
Thanks for asking again.
No problem.
So to wrap up here. Oh, we say low. But yeah, just to wrap up here. So, and we're doing good on time. But
just feel free, man. If you got to go over a little bit, man, it's all good. We're here.
We're
same here.
Just wanted to close out with, you're gonna do something different. So we typically just close out with prayer requests, but wanted to do something different. So with these prayer requests, they can be a 1-word to 3-word maximum. So we'll just kind of go around the horn and kind of, just kind of say what we can be praying for you for. And if you don't, that's fine too, but just typically, how we close out, just to keep it directed back to faith and to God. So yeah, Ladies first again. I'll start with you, Karen.
So dead. Stillness, repentance, and unconditional love.
Okay. Let's do Lawrence.
I'm still trying to receive my words. I'm gonna say clarity, confidence, and repeat.
Word. Okay. And do Brandon.
Patience, peaceful discernment,
Okay, we'll count that as one. or that too.
and I'll piggyback on clarity.
Word. LC?
I'm gonna say empathy, grace, and I'm gonna combine two real quick for you, but I'm gonna say childlike faith.
It's real. Robert?
I say, oh yeah.
Remember, 1 to 3.
Oh yeah. Track number 3 on Kendrick Lamar. Yeah. Humility. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Humility. Because it's hard when you know your crown is awakened, but there still be mistakes that we make too, you know?
No doubt.
Mm-hmm.
No doubt. All right, and I'll close out with steadfastness, consistency, which Lawrence, Kyra, and Rob have heard me talk about every episode. Last one, what would the last one be? Selflessness. So I'll say those 3. But yeah, I just want to close out. Thank y'all again for your time. Appreciate y'all, like, as fathers and Black fathers, like, you know, especially, you know, just I don't know. I just want to say thank you just for being the example, being the light, and then just continue raising your children just as the leaders and as the beautiful souls they are. And I just know they're gonna mature and grow up into people that you will be, you know, very proud of. I'm not the best. I'm fumbling all over my words, but just thank y'all. I thank you so much for what you do, and just raising model citizens and model children of God. So just thank you, and happy Father's Day to y'all.
Happy Father's Day, guys.
Appreciate that. Appreciate it. Thanks for having us, man. It's been a pleasure getting to know y'all, and look forward to breaking bread and however we can, man.
No doubt. But yeah, as I always close out, stay up like gas prices in the summertime.
And stay cool like the other side of the pillow. And I thank y'all.
Right? I like that.
Let me share what I got real quick. I got to bring the homie who I mentioned earlier. Where my little homie at? Little homie. Oh, here we go. We got Revelations right here. Come on now. Y'all ready? Y'all ain't ready. 1, 2, 3, 4. Little Willie Lamb. That shouldn't be domesticated. And then we got Rasta, we got Lion of Judah, you know, because my people be from Bermuda with pink sand and stuff, and they say hello too. Because my grandma called me a rat, and I'm like, hello, jeez. No, I'm prettier than that, I guess. Oh no. But thank y'all really, because I remember it was last week we did the other call, right? It was the week before.
Yeah, about 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, man, we did that. And I'm like, this looks interesting. And now we talking to y'all. I'm like, peace. Word up, son. You know what I mean? Like, it just feels so good because I want to be a father someday, but, you know, patience and such, because I have a colorful, wonderful tribe, and dialogue like this and thinking about my father, it's like we all dancing together in Wakanda, like boom, 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 boom. You know what I mean? So that's what it is.
Yeah.
Appreciate that, man.
Respect.
All right, fellas and lady. Appreciate y'all's time, and
Sure.
y'all stay up, stay safe out there, and God bless y'all.
God bless you as
too,
well.
man. Happy
Thank y'all.
Father's Day to everybody.
Happy
Peace.
Father's Day.
Thank you.